There is a truth that unsettles many people from the very first second they hear it. This truth is not about war, and it is not about the end of the world. It is simpler and far more frightening. The history you believe you are living might not begin with human beings. Before Adam, before Eden, before even the first light of the first day, a complete order already existed. Laws had already been written, time had already been measured, and humanity's destiny in some way had already been shaped. If that is true, then we were never as free as we thought. Welcome to Prophetic History Explained, where we do not retell history the way you were taught, but follow forgotten traces, rejected texts, and truths once considered too dangerous to say out loud. And today, we begin with a book whose very existence has made generations tremble. The Book of Jubilees. Most familiar religious stories begin the same way. Humanity is created. Humanity is given freedom. Humanity makes a mistake. Then laws appear to repair the damage, but Jubilees reverses that entire logic. In this text, law is not a reaction. Law is the foundation. It was not created after humanity fell. It existed before humanity was formed from dust. Jubilees claims there are heavenly tablets, celestial records on which every law, every order, every cycle of time was written before the visible universe appeared. What does that mean? It means the world does not run on randomness. It runs on a design that already exists, and humanity enters that world not as a creator, but as a late arrival into a system that has been operating for a very long time. According to Jubilees, angels were created before light. Before the sun, the moon, and the stars, intelligent beings already existed, observing, serving, and maintaining order. The Sabbath is not a rule invented late in religious history, and it is not a requirement limited to Israel. It is a cosmic principle established at the beginning, reflecting the perfect rhythm of God Himself. Even Eden looks different when it is read through Jubilees. Adam and Eve are not presented as simple primitive people living in a beautiful garden. They are described as beings clothed in light, closer to angels than to the fallen humanity that comes later. And the serpent is not treated as a vague symbol. Jubilees names it directly: Satan. From the very first moment of human history, an invisible confrontation has already begun. That leads to a haunting question. If order, law, and even conflict existed before humanity, then what is humanity's true role? Are we the center of the story, or are we characters stepping into a drama that was written long ago? This is where Jubilees becomes dangerous. It does not allow people to hide behind the excuse "we did not know." If the law was there from the start, if evil existed as an organized reality, then human choice carries far more weight than we want to admit. Every action becomes more than a personal decision. It becomes participation in a cosmic order, or resistance against it, an order that predates us. That is why Jubilees has not been welcomed. A text that claims time is holy, law is eternal, and history does not revolve around human will but around a heavenly design will always threaten any system that wants to control belief. And if this makes you feel uneasy, then you are sensing it correctly. Because if Jubilees is right, the question is no longer what did humans do wrong, but rather, how far are we living out of alignment with the order itself? And that is only the beginning. If you feel the chill of that question, subscribe to Prophetic History Explained right now. Your support is what enables us to keep opening hidden layers of history and to take you all the way to the end of the story, a place not everyone is willing to face. If humanity is not the beginning of history, then the fall is not either. In the Book of Jubilees, evil does not rise from the earth. It slips down from the heavens. It does not appear as a moral accident. It develops as a deliberate process of corruption that begins among the very beings who once stood closest to God. Jubilees introduces a specific group of angels called the Watchers. They were not created as enemies of humanity. They were observers assigned to guard order and guide a young human race. But here, the fragile boundary between guidance and interference breaks. The Watchers do not merely observe, they begin to transmit, and what they transmit is not simply knowledge, but power. In Jubilees, knowledge is never neutral. Given at the right time, it preserves order. Revealed in the wrong way to the wrong people, it becomes a tool of destruction. The Watchers teach humanity things they are not ready to carry. Methods for manipulating invisible forces, astrology as a way to control destiny, forbidden arts that bend natural limits, the craft of weapon making, and even the use of beauty as a weapon of domination. Jubilees does not condemn knowledge because knowledge is evil. It condemns the timing and the moral mismatch, knowledge delivered without the ethical foundation needed to bear it. The consequences do not arrive all at once. They spread slowly like water underground. Human society begins to shift. Competition turns into violence. Power becomes the highest goal. Then another boundary is crossed, more severe than all the rest. The Watchers do not only teach, they desire. They stop seeing human beings as creatures to protect and start seeing them as objects to possess. From the forbidden union between heaven and earth, distorted beings are born, the Nephilim. Jubilees describes the Nephilim not only by size, but by nature. They embody imbalance. Belonging fully neither to heaven nor to earth, they carry a hunger that cannot be satisfied. At first, they consume human resources. When the land is drained, they turn on animals. When every limit collapses, they turn on human beings themselves. Violence stops being individual behavior and becomes the structure of the world. Life loses value, death becomes normal. But Jubilees does not stop at describing consequences. It insists there is an organizing will behind the decay. A figure appears, quiet but decisive. Mastema. He does not create evil from nothing. Mastema is the strategist, the accelerator, the one who understands the weakness of angels and humans alike. Jubilees portrays him as the leader of evil spirits, a prince of hostility. He is the one who pushes the Watchers across the line, turning guidance into betrayal and order into chaos. The frightening part is not that angels fall, but that the fall unfolds in a sequence. Evil does not erupt as madness. It grows like a long-term strategy. Knowledge opens the door. Desire breaks the boundary. Power sustains control. And once everything reaches maturity, the world slides into a state beyond repair. Here, Jubilees offers a perspective many people find hard to accept. The flood is not a late reaction from God to human failure. It is an answer to a cosmic invasion. Corruption has passed beyond ordinary human moral collapse. It has struck the foundations of creation's order. But before the waters rise, Jubilees forces the reader to confront something even heavier. If the Watchers can fall, then closeness to God is not proof of loyalty. If knowledge can become a weapon of destruction, then understanding is not the same as wisdom. And if evil can begin in the heavens, then the world has never been a simple battlefield between good people and bad people. Jubilees does not let us blame everything on Adam or later generations. It widens the frame and shows humanity pulled into a crisis far larger than its control. Humanity becomes both an agent and a victim inside an order breached from the outside. That is why the coming judgment is not aimed only at the earth, but at the heavens as well. Once you understand this, the flood is no longer a children's story. It becomes a marker showing that the final boundary has been crossed. A world where knowledge is abused, power is corrupted, and order is inverted cannot continue unchanged. But what Jubilees reveals next is even more disorienting. Even after the world is cleansed, evil does not fully disappear, and the reason why will change how you see human history forever. When the world reaches the final limit of corruption, the Book of Jubilees does not present God as a being of uncontrolled rage. On the contrary, it frames the flood as a cold, calculated decision with strategic depth. This is not merely a moral punishment for human beings. It is a cosmic cleansing operation meant to restore an order that has been violently violated from both heaven and earth. According to Jubilees, corruption at that time is no longer limited to individual or social behavior. It has infected the structure of creation itself. The Watchers have crossed the boundary. The Nephilim have ruled through violence. Knowledge has been abused to control, exploit, and destroy. The world no longer operates under law, but under force. In that setting, the survival of humanity is not the true center of the crisis. The real threatened reality is the order of creation. The flood, therefore, is not meant to fix humanity first. It is meant to remove an unauthorized hybridization between heaven and earth. The Watchers are bound and imprisoned and stripped of the right to intervene in human history. The Nephilim are destroyed physically, ending their violent rule on the earth. The waters become the final border, erasing a world that has gone too far. But here, Jubilees reveals a detail that makes the entire story heavier than anything in Genesis. Cleansing does not mean evil ends completely. The spirits of the Nephilim, beings born from that forbidden union, cannot return to heaven, and they cannot rest in the earth. They become restless spirits, wandering, carrying hunger and hatred that have never been resolved. At this decisive point, Mastema appears again, not as a rebel, but as someone who understands the rules of the system. Jubilees depicts him approaching God with a terrifyingly reasonable argument. If all evil spirits are eliminated, who will test humanity? Who will expose true loyalty? Who will force the human race to confront its own choices? Mastema does not ask to preserve the old world. He does not try to rescue the Watchers. He asks only to keep 1/10 of these spirits. A small fraction, but enough to maintain temptation, accusation, and trial throughout history. The most shocking part is not the request, it is the permission. Jubilees claims that God allows Mastema to keep that portion. Not because God is weak, but because the new order after the flood is not a world without evil. It is a world where evil is limited, contained, and placed under permission to serve a larger purpose: testing humanity. Here, Jubilees forces the reader to abandon a simple view of history. The post-flood world is not a second paradise. It is a testing ground where every generation must answer the question the previous one failed. Will humanity choose order or chaos, obedience or rebellion, law or instinct? Evil in Jubilees does not operate freely. It acts within boundaries. But that does not make it harmless. It makes it more subtle. It no longer appears openly like giant Nephilim ruling through force. It slips through thought, desire, fear, and ambition. The remaining spirits of the pre-flood world become whisperers, instigators, accusers in the dark. This leads to a deep theological consequence. Human beings do not live in a neutral world. We enter a history where the conflict already predates us, where every personal choice carries weight beyond private life. Every decision becomes a response under invisible pressure that constantly tests the moral limits of the human race. The flood, therefore, does not end the tragedy. It opens a new chapter more complex than before. The world is cleansed but not emptied. Order is restored but paired with trial. And humanity, after the flood, can no longer pretend ignorance. Jubilees does not permit a naive faith. It forces a hard truth. Evil remains not because God is absent, but because humanity is still being tested. In that post-flood world, The question is no longer why evil exists, but what we will do while living with it. After the flood, the greatest problem is no longer destruction, but preventing the world from sliding back into chaos. The Book of Jubilees moves into a deeper and heavier claim. Order cannot be maintained by fear of punishment alone. It exists only when human beings live within law. And that law, according to Jubilees, is not invented gradually over time. It has always existed. It is eternal. Humanity is being reminded of it again and again. Jubilees refuses the idea that the law begins at Sinai. Sinai is not where law is created. Sinai is where law is publicly announced. Long before Moses, humanity lived under the same order. Noah, after the flood, is not only a survivor. He is the one tasked with rebuilding the world under instructions already written on the heavenly tablets. The Sabbath is reaffirmed as an unavoidable rhythm. The distinction between clean and unclean is not merely ritual detail. It preserves boundaries between order and chaos. The foundational festivals are not cultural inventions. They are sacred time markers that force human beings to remember they are living inside a meaningful history. Abraham continues that role, not as someone groping blindly toward God, but as someone directly guided. Jubilees emphasizes that Abraham does not only receive a covenant, he is taught law. Angels appear not merely to deliver news, but to train. They instruct him in sacrifice, in the festivals, and how to live in alignment with heavenly order. Even circumcision in Jubilees is not a localized historical marker. It is portrayed as an eternal principle written on the heavenly tablets and even observed by angels. That turns circumcision from a national symbol into a sign of cosmic order. In that worldview, sin is not vague or purely emotional. Jubilees describes sin as debt. A wrongful act does not fade with time. It is recorded precisely on heavenly records. This is not the image of a suspicious God. It is the image of absolute justice, where every choice leaves a trace. No act is meaningless, and no injustice is overlooked. That is why Cain and Abel carry a different weight in Jubilees. The first murder is not only a personal crime or a family tragedy. It violates an eternal law that existed before humanity was created. Abel's blood does not only cry out for justice, it pollutes the land itself. Jubilees describes this not as a symbolic curse, but as a real reaction in creation. The soil becomes less productive. Harmony between humanity and the natural world breaks. Violence, once introduced, does not stop with the first victim. It spreads into the structure of the world. But Jubilees also opens another dimension that forces a different view of justice. The heavenly tablets do not record sin only. They also record repentance. Debt can be paid not by pretending sin never happened, but by real transformation. Repentance does not erase history, but it changes the outcome. In this system, justice and mercy do not cancel each other. They move together inside a perfect order. This makes human responsibility far heavier. No one can hide behind ignorance. No one can disappear into the crowd. Every personal decision is placed inside a wider frame where history, ethics, and cosmic order intersect. People are not only living for the present, they are participating in the movement of a plan written long before them. Jubilees does not comfort. It does not soothe fear with easy promises. It forces an uncomfortable truth. Living under mercy does not mean living outside law. Freedom is not escape from order. Freedom is the choice to live rightly within order. And every time people deliberately ignore eternal law, they do not only harm themselves, they contribute to pulling the world away from its original alignment. The post-flood world in Jubilees is not an innocent restart. It is a world handed to humanity with guidance, warning, and responsibility already in place. From Noah to Abraham and later to Moses, The message remains the same. Order has been given, law has been written, and humanity cannot claim it did not know. The only remaining question is the one every generation must answer. Will they live as guardians of order, or will they keep adding new debt to the heavenly tablets? In the entire Book of Jubilees, nothing causes more controversy, resistance, and eventual rejection than time itself. Not fallen angels, not demons, not the flood. The most explosive claim is the way people measure and use their days. Jubilees declares something many religious systems cannot accept. Time does not belong to human beings. Time is sacred, shaped from heaven, and anyone who distorts it is breaking cosmic order. In Jubilees, God does not only create space, He establishes an exact rhythm for time. The sacred calendar is not a social invention or an agricultural convenience. It is a holy structure written on the heavenly tablets. The year is 364 days divided into 52 perfect weeks with no remainder. The year is arranged into 4 seasons of 91 days each season beginning on the same day of the week. And the year always begins on the 4th day, the day the celestial lights are created to govern time. This is not technical trivia, it is a theological declaration. Jubilees is saying time, like law, carries the stamp of perfection and order. When people live according to that rhythm, worship does not dissolve into arguments, festivals do not drift, and sacred memory remains intact. But when people change the calendar, they do not only change numbers, they change meaning. Jubilees views a lunar-based calendar not as a harmless alternative, but as a dangerous deviation. When holy days shift across different weekdays, when sacred events no longer align to a fixed rhythm, collective memory starts to lose orientation. Festivals become habit, habit becomes form, and form eventually separates from the presence of God. In Jubilees, this is not a small mistake, it is a silent rebellion stretched over time. Here you begin to see why Jubilees is considered dangerous. Control of time becomes control of faith. Whoever decides the sacred days shapes the spiritual life of the community. A book that declares the calendar in use is wrong, that festivals are being kept out of alignment with heavenly order, does not only challenge theology, it challenges authority. But Jubilees does not stop with warning. It expands into long cycles of history. There is a sabbatical cycle of 7 years when the land must rest and cannot be exploited for profit. Then there is the Jubilee cycle after 49 years when everything is reset. Slaves are freed, debts are canceled, land returns to its original family line. This is not economic policy. This is a declaration that no one owns anything permanently except God. 2 consecutive years without sowing, the 49th year and the Jubilee year, is not a small test. It forces people to trust that heavenly order can sustain them. It breaks the logic of hoarding, accumulation, and possession. And because it breaks that logic, it also breaks the logic of human power. Jubilees treats refusal to honor these cycles as a direct reason for losing land and entering exile. Not because God is unpredictable, but because people refuse the rhythm the world was designed to follow. From time, Jubilees carries Moses into an apocalyptic vision. History does not drift, it moves along a trajectory already known. Israel will repeatedly turn away from eternal law. The temple will be violated, the people will be scattered, but that is not the end. After a period of chaos and purification, a true repentance will emerge, and with it will come restoration. What is striking is that the end times vision in Jubilees is not total destruction and a restart from zero. It is a return to the original order. A renewed heaven and earth is not an improvised invention, but the re-establishment of a design that already existed. Time will run in the right rhythm again. Law will be written in human hearts again. The world will stop fighting against itself. When the Book of Jubilees closes, the feeling it leaves is not comfort but awakening. If time is sacred, then each day lived out of alignment carries consequence. If history has order, then chaos is not fate but the result of choice. Jubilees does not ask whether you believe or disbelieve, it asks something more uncomfortable. Are you living in harmony with heavenly order? Or are you slowly pulling the world away from it? That question, more than any fallen angel story or apocalyptic warning, is the true reason this book was buried. Because once people realize time does not belong to them, no one can live as if everything is meaningless and can be delayed forever. The deepest lesson Jubilees leaves for modern people may be this: freedom does not mean living without law. Freedom means recognizing you are living within law. When people forget time is sacred, they begin to live in haste, consumption, possession, and exhaustion. When people forget law is eternal, they turn morality into a flexible agreement. When people forget evil is not a joke, they lose inner vigilance and allow small whispers to lead into great collapses. Applying Jubilees to life today does not require changing your calendar or returning to ancient rituals. It demands a deeper adjustment. Living with awareness of time, honoring rhythms of rest and learning to stop. Living with responsibility for choices, knowing no act is meaningless. And living awake, recognizing the moral conflict is not only out in society but begins inside the silent decisions of the heart. If these questions feel deep to you, join the Prophetic History Explained community so we can keep exploring hidden texts, forgotten histories, and ancient lessons that still shape the world today. And do not forget to subscribe to Prophetic History Explained, because your support is what helps us create content that is deep, honest, and awake in the videos to come.